Hello and welcome to another episode of the Deceptive Reality Podcast. My name is Poorly Lit Nick, and with me is the well-lit and erudite Bert. Erudite.
I gotta be real careful with that one, Nick. That one, that might go the wrong direction. So I'm just gonna say I don't know what that word is. I'm not even gonna attempt to say it.
I'm surprised you don't know what the word is because the word means you're scholarly and well-educated.
Yeah, that's definitely not me, Nick.
That's not true. You are well-educated in a lot of topics.
When our people come to our podcast, they're not coming to me for the brains, okay? I don't know why they actually
they're not coming here for brains at all. Not for brains.
According to our comments sometime, that's correct.
Well, wild conspiracy theories is what we're peddling.
That is true. And actually tonight is an interesting one. I'm super curious if Nick knows this one. And
I hope not.
Moment of truth. I researched this probably 5 months ago.
Oh, do you remember this one then?
I remember the episode. It's funny because I had created the scripting, but I didn't do any of the audio. I didn't do any of the backup music. I didn't do any of that stuff. So I was ready to go. And I specifically said, if we ever need a two-parter, here it is. I've got three.
We need it.
I've got 3 two-parters, and we're running a little shallow.
That's a 6-parter. Wow.
Yeah. If I wanted to, we could do a 6-parter, Nick.
Wow, that'd be a big one.
This one for sure is a 2-parter. And I know that because the audio is long. Good. We're not going to talk about how long the audio is. It's fine.
We can generally judge that, but I do want to know how long the audio is.
It's long, Nick.
More than 30 minutes?
Barely.
Wow. Yeah, this is going to be a 2-parter at least.
Well, it depends on how much we talk between the sections, but I think we're going to talk a lot because look who we are. Yeah, correct. Let's put it this way. In the last year of podcasts, we've covered a plethora of different things.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like this episode is going to cover quite a few of them in one episode.
Oh, is this like a recap?
No.
Episode kind of thing? No,
this is an actual unsolved
I'm
mystery.
completely lost then.
Yeah, this is an unsolved mystery.
I'm lost.
Let's put it this way. Okay. This is going to cover a lot of ground, and I have some live audio in this, which is why it's a little over 30 minutes. Yeah. So we're going to be hearing live audio. It's kind of hard to hear in some sections because it's a little off. Also, I'm going to mention for you, I have not edited the bleepity bleeps that I need to bleep.
Good.
And the reason
I don't need that.
The reason for that is I want you to understand the context, but sorry, viewers, you're not going to be able to hear some of these words. So sorry.
You should bleep out random words that I'm saying just so it sounds like I'm also swearing. Just regular words. Just regular
words, yeah. I bleeped twice right there, Nick.
Yeah, I don't know. Beep. What's going on?
Were you ready to get this swing ding on the road?
Yeah, I hope I don't know what this is. I hope.
Let's put it this way. When I was researching it, it's researched as one story.
Okay.
But there's so much more to the story that no one covers. So if you know one small section of it, you may not know the other 60% of the podcast.
Right. Now, you've said similar things to this before, and I think they've become my favorite podcasts that we've done. So I'm pretty pumped for this.
If you don't know this story, this will probably become one of your top 5.
Oh, I like it. You've never let me down on that.
All right, Nick, let's see if you get into this.
It was a crisp morning in early 1992. Steven Sudbrink, lost in the haze of excitement and anticipation, drove alone down the winding roads toward Long Island, New York. The morning sun cast a warm glow over his dashboard as he replayed the events that lay ahead of him. his own wedding a momentous day. As Stephen's thoughts drifted to vows and celebrations, a flash of movement caught his eye in the rearview mirror. A car was approaching fast, gaining on him in quick spurts. It felt familiar in some way he couldn't place, and an odd sense of recognition washed over him. It was only when the car pulled alongside him that he saw it clearly. The tan paint, the slightly off-kilter bumper. It was his older brother Gary's car. Stephen's confusion flickered briefly, replaced by a surge of joy. His brother, who lived far off in Texas, must have come early for the wedding, perhaps as a surprise. Stephen smiled and waved eagerly, but his brother, seated alone in the driver's seat, did not respond. Gary's gaze was intense, unbroken, fixed entirely on Stephen. His hands gripped the steering wheel, but he wasn't watching the road. Stephen's smile faded as he took in his brother's expression. There was something unsettling about it. Gary's face began to contort, almost imperceptibly at first, into bizarre expressions, eyes wide and unblinking, mouth twisting into what could only be described as a grotesque mockery of a grin. He looked like he was trying to convey something, though Stephen couldn't make sense of it. Stephen's grip on his own wheel tightened. It was also out of place. Gary wasn't one for pranks, least of all strange gestures on the open road. But just as quickly as he had appeared, Gary's car accelerated, shooting forward and vanishing down the road in a matter of seconds, leaving Stephen in silence and confusion. He shook his head, deciding it was easier to laugh it off. Perhaps his brother was caught up in the excitement of the day, just as he was. A strange moment. Maybe even a bit of a thrill. As Stephen refocused on his drive, the encounter slipped into the back of his mind. Another odd but fleeting memory. The wedding passed in a blur of joy and laughter. Later that evening, as the final guests trickled out, Stephen found himself alone with Gary. He took the opportunity to ask about the morning encounter. "Why were you goofing around like that on the road?" Stephen laughed, hoping Gary would reveal the joke, put his mind at ease. Gary's smile fell, replaced with a look of complete puzzlement. "What are you talking about?" he asked, frowning. "You know," Stephen pressed, "you pulled up alongside me this morning. You were staring, making faces. And then, you just sped off." Gary's brow furrowed deeply and he shook his head. "Stephen, I didn't drive here. I flew in yesterday. My car's still in my garage back in Texas. You know that." Stephen felt a chill run down his spine. He searched his brother's face for any hint of a joke, a smirk, something to explain the encounter. But Gary's expression was only sincere bewilderment. He hadn't been on the road that morning. And his car, the one Stephen was so certain he had seen, was nearly 2,000 miles away. The brothers stared at each other, locked in an unsettling silence as each tried to reason through what the other had experienced. Gary concluded that Stephen had simply mistaken another car or another driver for him. He laughed it off, giving his brother a reassuring clap on the shoulder. But Stephen felt something else, a deep, quiet certainty. It was Gary he'd seen. It had been his brother in that car, sitting alone, staring at him with those unfamiliar eyes.
Well, I got no clue so far, but this is fascinating.
Yeah, so this is the story, as everyone who read the title knows, the Sudbrink. I'm going to call this mystery for now.
Okay, the Sudbrink mystery?
Yes.
Okay.
So when most people tell this story, this part is never in it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I think it's extremely
like the part we just heard.
Yes.
The only thing I thought of when I was listening to this, especially when it got to the end, is we have something here called Forerunners.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You ever heard of that?
Oh yeah,
That's
the
what
Toyota?
I think of when I hear it. No. Forerunners here are you see your own ghost while you're still alive.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah, no, we don't. I've never heard of that.
And it means something's going to happen to you.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, you never heard that before?
No. Mm-mm.
I bet you've got some equivalent, but it's probably like a different name. But here it's called Forerunners.
We call like doppelgangers. Is that what you mean? Doppelganger? Is that what it is?
Doppelgangers?
Yeah.
Like, is that like you see yourself and then it means something bad's going to happen to you? Or
generally, it's you that is not you that's going to kill you and take your place.
Oh no, that's sort of different. Although that's an interesting topic I'd like to hear more about.
Yeah.
Forerunners are just like very common in this specific area. In fact, more common on the island that I came from than anywhere else. But you'd be walking down the road at night and you'd see a ghost, but it's you. And you just walk by yourself. And that means in the next little while, you're done for.
Yeah, no, I'd be good on that, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, no one wants to see that.
Don't want to see
like,
that, Nick. There ain't no way.
No. But apparently it used to happen all the time.
I don't know how the story'd ever get out. They'd be dead.
But it's not right away.
Oh, it's like
people get
later?
home and they'd say, "Oh, yeah, I saw my Forerunner today, so I've got about 3 days."
Oh, that's crazy.
And then that'd be that. So
it's like those
are spooky.
It's like Ringo.
It is a little bit like that,
3
isn't
days.
it? Yeah, well, it would be like 7 days.
Yeah.
She's nicer. She gives you a little more time.
She does. She gives you an extra 4 days to contemplate your death.
Yeah. Yeah, really. Like this one gives you 3 days. It's like, I ain't got time for this.
Exactly.
3 days is what you got.
Exactly.
But I don't know yet, but this doesn't sound like that's what's going to happen.
So the interesting thing for anyone that didn't catch it, and I'm sure the importance is we're starting this story with someone we're not going to finish with.
Oh, so someone might be goner.
Well, not really, but it's important because you'll understand this later. But right now, you know how some movies it'll be you're following this person and then like 10 minutes later it has nothing to do with them again.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I like that kind of thing.
That's this. So what happened is Stephen has a wedding in 1992. That gives you an idea of how long ago and the technology and all that stuff. So in 1992, he's going to his wedding and he's driving down the street. As he's driving, this car flies up behind him and he's looking and he recognizes the paint, the bumper that's kind of screwed up.
Right.
He looks across and it's his brother. Now his brother is just looking at him with this weird look on his face.
Like making faces and stuff.
Kinda, yeah. Now his brother's name is Gary.
Right.
So Gary's heading in the same direction. So he's like, it's just Gary. Gary's far enough away, you know, and then they're just going to keep moving. They get to the wedding. They do the entire wedding and then they meet each other. And Steve's like, what's all that about? Like, why are you acting like that on the road? Yeah. Gary's like, what are you talking about? And he goes, you know, you gave me that weird look. And he's like, bro, my car is back at home 2,000 miles away. I flew here.
Yeah, that wasn't me.
So the person you saw, and the crazy part of the entire thing is Steven recognized the car first.
Right.
Yeah.
That is the wild part.
Yes.
Like, why would he, in his mind, summon that car from 3,000 miles away even?
Correct. Now, we started the story talking about Steven and him seeing the brother Gary. The rest of this podcast is going to revolve around Gary.
Oh, okay. Interesting facts. When I went to Long Island, I stayed with a family where the husband was named Stephen. I wonder if it's the same guy.
Could be the same guy, Nick.
Weird.
Oh, man.
It's not like that's an incredibly common name that probably 1 in every 5 people is called Stephen.
Impossible. Especially here in the States. It's impossible.
Impossible. Nick. Yeah, none of you guys are called Stephen, except one guy.
One guy's like, I'm called Stephen.
Yeah, I'm a Stephen. I'm the Stephen.
So, yeah, this is starting out to be a wild turn. Some people call this the starting of a doppelganger is what they consider this story when they hear this part.
Did you see that movie recently with Nick Cage where he starts showing up in people's dreams?
I don't think so.
He's just a regular college professor, and he just starts showing up in people's dreams, like even of people who don't know him. And he's just like having a bag of chips standing while stuff is happening to him and all this stuff. And he don't remember it.
That's crazy.
But he started to appear to people, and I wonder if that's the direction this is going to take. All speculation so far.
I mean, listen, hey, it's always good to speculate, Nick, but after we play this next segment, you're going to be really lost.
Oh, okay, I'll have to relate it to some other movie I saw.
Do you want to hear the next part? Maybe the next part will give you a way to go.
Yeah, maybe I'll get a little more clarity in the next part.
You get a little more clarity, I think.
In the early 1990s, Air Force officer Gary Sudbrink was serving as a pharmacist on base in San Antonio, Texas. February had brought him a rare gift, a 3-day weekend. Instead of notifying his superiors, Gary decided he'd slip away quietly, fly to New York, and spend some time with family and old friends. It would be a break from the routine and an overdue visit home. He'd finally have the chance to talk to his father about the unsettling experience his brother had shared with him, a story of a mysterious look-alike on a deserted road. Gary packed his bags, eager for the trip, when a loud, unnatural hum drifted in from outside. Puzzled, he walked out to his balcony. A helicopter hovered just beyond his property, its blades cutting the air in a pulsing rhythm, facing his apartment as if watching him. It was close enough that he could make out its shape, but not its markings. He turned back inside to grab his glasses, but by the time he returned to the balcony, the helicopter was already rising, its rotors spinning with force as it vanished over the horizon. It left an uneasy silence behind. Shaking off a faint chill, Gary dismissed the incident as military exercises, though he wondered why they would be so close to residential buildings. With a last glance at the empty sky, he returned to his bags. At the airport, he tried to focus on the upcoming reunion, but as he stood at his terminal waiting to board, a slim man with a brown overcoat sidled up next to him. The man greeted Gary with an unsettling familiarity, his handshake firm, his gaze piercing. He struck up small talk in an overly polite tone, asking about Gary's destination and mentioning his own small business venture. When Gary mentioned he was stationed at the nearby Air Force base, the man's eyes brightened as if recognizing something. He asked for Gary's name. As an officer, Gary was accustomed to politeness and protocol, so he answered, but his instincts prickled as the man pressed further, asking for his full name. Gary's last name was partially hidden under his uniform, and the way this stranger's gaze drifted over his badge was unsettling. "Don't worry," the man said with an oddly warm smile. "You won't get into trouble." The words felt like both a promise and a warning. Gary forced a polite nod, and just as he was beginning to turn away, his boarding row was called. He excused himself with relief, eager to leave the encounter behind. Settling into his seat on the plane, Gary tried to shake off the lingering discomfort. Soon, a man with long hair and glasses settled in beside him, and they exchanged the usual pleasantries. Gary let himself relax, thinking the oddity of the day was behind him. But a few minutes into the flight, another passenger appeared with a ticket for the long-haired man's seat. Apologizing, the man stood to let the new passenger sit, but rather than returning to his assigned spot, he moved across the aisle, directly beside Gary once again. Gary's stomach knotted as the man continued the conversation, his questions turning oddly specific. "When will you be back in Texas? How long will you be away?" Gary offered vague answers, hoping the man would lose interest. Then a stewardess approached, informing the stranger that he was still in the wrong seat. The man reluctantly stood, only to pause a few steps away, lingering beside the emergency exit. With each moment that passed, his gaze grew more intense, his questions more insistent. "How do you spell your last name?" he pressed, leaning in slightly. "When exactly will you return to Texas?" Gary, maintaining a mask of politeness, refused to answer. He avoided eye contact, his mind racing as he wondered what this man could possibly want. The stewardess finally intervened again, guiding the man to his actual seat far down the aisle. Gary watched him go, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. The man never returned, and Gary didn't see him for the rest of the flight. But as soon as he landed, he reached for his phone, dialing his landlady back in Texas. In a hushed tone, he explained the unsettling encounters, requesting that she keep an eye on his apartment. He hadn't been sure if he was overreacting, if he was simply letting his mind run wild. Yet as he left the airport and headed toward his parents' house, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. Gary didn't know it yet, but he was already being drawn into a mystery far beyond his control, a web of strange visitors and mysterious voices that would follow him home.
I got chills, man. Still don't know what's going on, but I like where it's going.
Well, that's good, because this
is a real good story.
This part is part of what they do tell.
Right.
There's different segments. What I try to do is go with the most popular version of everything, and then I tied in a few things that no one else covers.
Right. So now I'm thinking like Men in Black kind of stuff going on, shenanigans, like covert stuff.
Interesting. Well, there's a lot of info in this one. A lot of info.
Right.
So in the first segment, we talked about Steven and he saw Gary. Well, now we're talking about Gary.
Right.
So
yeah,
it was weird for Steven because he's like, why is Gary acting so weird? Well, now Gary's dealing with everyone else, and he goes, why is everyone acting so weird?
Right. Why is everyone else acting so weird?
Exactly. So
yeah, this guy's interrogating him.
Yes, he is. The two guys, there's two separate guys. Those were two separate guys. Yeah. So what most people don't acknowledge, and it's easy to forget, is at the very beginning of this, it said that he was given a 3-day weekend.
Right.
He didn't tell anyone he was leaving.
Yeah. So he was technically AWOL there, wasn't he?
He was completely, everyone was oblivious. Nobody knew he was leaving town.
Yeah. Not even his commanding officer.
Not even his commanding officer.
Right.
So it starts out, he does this 3-day weekend. He gets his plane ticket and then he dips. He starts heading out. So first things first, he's packing his bags and he hears this really loud noise and he goes, what in the heck is that?
Right. Which I thought was outside here because you've heard it before.
Yes.
I'm right under the path of the life flight.
Yeah.
And that freaks me out every time. And I hear it all the time.
Yeah. I actually, when I created that sound, I made it sound like it was outside. And of course, to do that, you kill the treble and you increase the bass to make it sound like it's coming through walls.
Oh, it worked.
And
it worked.
Yeah, it worked.
I didn't know it was there.
Yeah. But actually, when you hear the door open, it does this weird transition to where you hear it go into the treble as the door swings open. It's a weird, I don't know. I'm a nerd for sound. So
it works out. Trust me.
So he gets this helicopter and he looks up and he goes, why is there a helicopter hovering so close to my house? But his eyesight's not great. So he goes back inside to get his glasses. As he gets the glasses, it's flying away and he can't get any badging.
Yeah. Now, if you don't live under a regular flight path, that's real unusual for you.
Yes.
Like right here, it's pretty normal, although it freaks me out every time it happens because it's not a good sign. It's the hospital helicopter.
Yes.
However, other than living here, I'd never had helicopters fly right over, so I didn't even know what it sounded like, really.
That's interesting.
So, yeah, it never happened until I moved here.
Yeah, for you, that would have to be pretty difficult, I would assume. Nerve-wracking is probably a better...
No. Well, it's only because I associate it with something's happening to someone that's not good.
Correct, yeah.
But if it was just like, I thought it was like, I don't know, what do helicopters do when they're not doing emergencies?
Helicopter things?
What do they do? Yeah, like what else do we use helicopters for, Bert?
A whole bunch of stuff. Travel.
I don't know, like
carrying stuff. Sometimes they use
maybe
it's putting out fires.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
The police.
I guess I've only ever heard them when they're taking people back and forth. Oh, when the prime minister and his opponent were here, they had people with guns and helicopters flying around threatening us.
How'd they get the horses up there?
Oh, the horses fit right into them.
Wow. Because the Mounties got to go up there.
Yeah. Well, no, it wasn't Mounties. It was their secret police or whatever it is.
Like the Secret Service here in the States.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think we call ours that. Maybe.
I mean,
maybe we do. But they were up there just in case anyone tried any funny business.
Nah, we just let people shoot at our people.
I think that's what they're worried is going to happen here because there's a lot of division here as well. Boy.
Well, luckily, these elections, by the time you guys are watching this, the elections is over. Sorry to whoever lost.
Yeah, I guess this is, potentially our last podcast.
Exactly. Just kidding. World War III, baby.
Yeah, watch Civil War, that new movie that came out, and you'll get an idea what's going to happen here.
That movie's so crazy. Have you watched that, Nick?
Oh, yeah. I thought it could happen.
Yeah, I think so. I think it could.
Yeah.
The crazy part of that
staying
movie,
home.
and I'm not going to give it away.
Yeah.
But let's just say, and you're going to know the part I'm talking about when she goes to take the picture in the hallway.
Yeah.
And then things happen. I said,
"Yep."
What? What is this? Why are you doing this to me?
I know, right?
I was so mad, Nick.
It's worth a watch, everyone. If you still have electricity after this election, watch the movie.
It'll be prep. Yeah. Is it crazy?
Yeah, really?
It was really crazy. I also love the part where they're outside, the snipers are. They're shooting across at the house, and the house is shooting across at them.
Yeah.
Those guys was hilarious.
Interesting because I know we're both interested in like cinematography and stuff.
Yep.
When they're driving through the forest fire.
Yes.
100% fake.
Oh, yeah.
Completely.
Oh, yeah.
It's layers upon layers upon layers of single flames.
Yes.
It's amazing.
You know what I think it was I think that was not necessarily an afterthought, but they're like, we'll have way more time to do this. And then they didn't. And they're like,
it looked so good though, I thought.
Yeah, it looked fine. But you can clearly tell. And that's part of the problem. When you can clearly tell, that's a problem.
Right. Well, when I had to drive through that last year when the province was on fire.
Yep.
The big difference was they weren't coughing as they were driving through it.
Yeah.
So that's a thing.
The fire looked off also.
Well, I don't even think it was real fire. I think it was like a fake fire that they had made. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that, but I know it's completely fabricated.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But a great movie. If you've not seen it, you got to go back and see it.
Yeah, you've got one day.
One day. By the time you've watched, it's too late.
Yeah, by the time you've watched it, you're in it.
Exactly. Hopefully you're doing good.
Yeah, hopefully you're on the good side.
Exactly. But so obviously they're dealing with all this stuff. He gets there. He gets to the airport, that is. Now he's completely confused. A guy walks up to him in the airport and was like, "Hey, what's going on?" I don't know about you, but when I'm in the airport, I keep my head down and I just focus on a phone. I don't talk to anybody.
That is what I would love to do, but it never happens that way. People, I don't know why this is. People love to talk to me in public. Strangers love to talk to me in public places.
That's crazy. Yeah. I avoided at all costs. And back in the 90s, what I used to do is grab they didn't have, obviously our cell phones was not cool back then, but like I used to grab remember on the old airplanes, they had those airplane catalogs you could look through.
Oh yeah.
Like they had those in the actual airports, and I would just sit there and thumb through them, or I'd buy a magazine or take a magazine. Actually, I've read a couple of books in the airports. So.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I tried to listen to, on my last trip there, I tried to listen to an audiobook, and I got to on the way back a little bit. Mm-hmm. But on the way up, there was a young couple that was going to a music festival, and they really wanted to show me how to play this board game that they were playing.
Yeah.
So they were telling me all the rules about that and everything like that. I'm like, I'm just some stranger. Like, why are you doing this to me?
Nick's like,
But they were nice. I can't.
Nick's like, I'm never going to play this game. Just don't even tell me.
I totally wasn't. I mean, I would be a player. I was like, yeah, show me how it's played and stuff. They're like, do you want to play around? And I'm like, no, that's all right.
No, I just watch.
But that was nice.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, for me, strange events in the airport, pretty common.
Yeah, for me, I avoid talking to people, period. That's just my goal. My goal in life is to talk to as few of people as I possibly can, Nick.
You know, I share the goal. I just don't think I'm as good at it.
Yeah, we kind of suck at this, Nick, because we went into a realm where we talk to people. So
Exactly. Yeah. I think I'm approachable in real life.
Oh,
like people just walk up to me and start talking. I don't know why.
Yeah, I got RBF, so people leave me alone.
Oh, I've been trying to develop that, but it just don't work. I can't help it. I like am smiling a lot, and I don't mean to be.
Yeah, I don't smile at all, Nick. I frown.
Oh,
I'm gonna do my scrunched up
you're
face.
A Scrooge all over.
I look like Walter from Jeff Dunham. Dunham.
Yeah,
like a Walter. But
I got to work on that.
Yeah, you got to work on your face, Nick. There you go. That's pretty good.
That hurts. Can't hold it.
No, I can hold it for all day. But he gets there and he's talking to this guy, and this guy, he starts asking him weird questions like, hey, where you going? What are you doing? I've got this business. It's a little side adventure. What's your name? You know, it's not uncommon. You know, I've had people, hey, what's your name? And like him, I would say it's Bert.
Well, one thing he said that freaked me out when I was listening to it is like, don't worry, you won't get in trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that makes me think I am in trouble.
Correct. Because that's a weird thing to tell anybody. Hey, you know, what's your last name? Oh, you can tell me. You won't get in trouble. Like that's just.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in danger at that point.
Absolutely. Amber alert me at that point. Good night.
Right. No one, literally no one needs to know your last name.
Nobody ever needs to know your last name.
Literally no one.
And that's kind of the thing. So he's asking for this last name, and then right as it's starting to get awkward and he's kind of starting to get away, they call his number or his letter for getting on the plane. Right. So he's like, well, gotta go, deuces. And he dips off. He gets on the plane.
Right.
Puts his luggage over top. He sits down, and this guy sits down right beside him. And now he's starting to talk to him. Now he's already forgotten about the first guy. He's like, whew, thank goodness I got out of that situation. And so he's sitting there and he's talking to the guy. And the guy's like, oh, what's your name? And he starts, you know, giving the thing. Now, all the while, he's got his uniform on that has his full name on it, but his jacket's covering half of his last name.
Yeah.
Which makes it really interesting when you think about it.
See, I thought it was the same guy.
Oh, no, it's a different guy.
I came up to him twice. Oh, okay.
Yeah, completely different guy. So
is that better or worse? I don't know.
I think worse now. That's worse because now he's starting to ask, where you going? How long you going to be there? What's your last name? So the stewardess comes over and the stewardess is like, sir, you're sitting in the wrong seat. You got to go. This guy's seat. So he gets up and he goes to the other side of him and he starts talking to him again.
Right.
How do you spell your last name? And he's like, dude, I'm not giving you my last name. Okay.
Yeah. You're getting way too intimate with me on this plane here.
Right. Now think about it. When you're getting on a plane, and you're trying to get to your destination, other people's trying to get to their destination, they don't want this kind of stuff. They just want to get in their seat, sit down, get your seat belt, prepare to take off. But now you've got this guy that's getting in everybody's way.
And I'd be getting mad.
I'd be getting frustrated, But he sits there and
get in your darn seat.
Exactly. But he's sitting there, he's like, dude, like it's not going to happen. So now the stewardess comes over again. She's like, sir, you're still not in your right seat. Like you got to go.
Right.
You got to go to your seat. So finally the guy gets up. He goes to his seat. He's going through the entire process. He doesn't see him the rest of the flight. He gets off the flight and he doesn't even see where the guy goes. It's like the guy's completely disappeared.
Yeah.
So he freaks out.
That's weird too.
Yeah. Like you're going to see the guy again, especially if you're looking for him.
Yeah. Especially if he went past you.
Correct.
Right?
Exactly.
He's got no other way to get off there.
Yeah. Everyone's leaving the same spot.
Yeah.
So he grabs his cell phone. He calls his landlord because he's like, I bet someone's trying to rob me. Like that's what they're doing. That's why they're asking my name when I'm coming back. They're confirming this clearly is someone that's going to rob my house.
Right.
So he calls the landlord and he's like, listen, someone is going to try to rob me blind. Keep an eye on my house. Make sure everything's good. And then that's where our story ends. In that segment. Our story continues, but.
Yeah, it's getting real creepy. It was starting to give me a little bit of chills. That's how I know a story's good.
Well,
is when I'm getting that.
The next section, listen, it gets a little bit scarier. Let's just put it this way. We're going to be hearing some live phone calls on this podcast. Now, by that, what I mean is we're about 9 minutes, and these segments are a little longer. We're about 9 minutes into 35 minutes of story.
Right.
So, but even though it's like they go quick because these segments are a little bit longer, but I didn't want to cut this into like 90 different sections so we're given a lot of information. That's why I want to spend the time to talk about what's happened after each segment so that it's kind of drawn out. But the next section, it gets even scarier. And then we start getting into live phone calls.
Oh, I can't believe we've already gone through 9 minutes because the story's so good. Like it's breezing by.
It's so good.
But before I want to get to the next part, but before we do, I want to mention, did you ever hear of this ingenious way that people used to rob people? Where it makes me think of this because if these people were robbing him, they'd have to have a lot of stuff in place. Like he's at the airport. Yeah. He don't know these people, right?
Right.
So what they used to do is they used to criminals would actually buy desirable tickets to the theater or whatever, tickets that are kind of hard to get. They call up someone they want to rob and say, hey, you've won 2 tickets to so-and-so concert, right? Or so-and-so play. And people would be like skeptical and they'd say, okay, sure, whatever. But then these actual legit tickets would show up at their house.
Oh, wow.
No request for money or anything like that. Just a little letter that says, enjoy your tickets from WKRP in Cincinnati or what have you, right? And they're like, well, these tickets are legit. I guess it really was a radio thing. So the night for the concert or whatever was like, it's like 3-4 hours. They go, they have a great time. Nothing's wrong. They were legit tickets. They were purchased legitimately. They're gone for 3 or 4 hours. Meanwhile, the second they roll out of the driveway, people break into their house and rob them, knowing that they've got at least 4 hours to do it.
That's crazy. You'd have to get a really good house for that to work, though.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you paid a lot of money for those tickets.
Well, exactly. And they were doing it in wealthy neighborhoods. But that is like the kind of coordination and smarts that someone would need in this situation to rob a guy who never told anyone where he was going.
And think about it. I told you we was going to be covering multiple segments of our podcast.
Right.
So far, we've covered, and we've not went into like doppelganger kind of deals, but like that's one form that we've kind of talked about, but only in passing.
Right.
Now you said it yourself, like a Men in Black MIB kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking about these guys.
I wonder if there's anything else we've covered. We've covered those 2 things for sure.
Well, it's a little bit like the Watchers because it seems like these guys know a bit about this guy.
That's true. Kind of like the Watchers.
So,
yeah. Or some would even say, like,
although we never really knew what it was.
Yeah, we don't. Or even like the Circleville letters, because they watched them in the Circleville letters also. Yeah. So very similar to like the
probably
Watchers.
More like the Circleville letters.
Could be. Yep. For sure.
Yeah.
So we've kind of at least covered 3 or possibly 4 episodes already in 2 segments.
Yeah, we're doing the Deceptive Reality World Tour here.
What if I told you the next segment incorporates a whole new version of our podcast?
Oh, yeah. I would not believe you at all until you proved yourself.
But check this out, Nick. Let me get your thought process on this.
Gary Sudbrink arrived in New York under the gray cloak of an overcast sky. That evening, he sat with his father in the dimly lit living room of his childhood home, listening as his father recounted an experience from just a few weeks earlier. He and Gary's uncle, avid followers of UFO sightings, had been on a trip to West Virginia when, on an isolated mountain road, they saw something strange, something hovering, something shining faintly against the darkening sky. They'd told no one but swore that it was a UFO. Though Gary himself was not much for believing in such things, he listened intently. As Gary shared his own story about the helicopter that had mysteriously hovered near his apartment, his father's face grew thoughtful. "You know, just today," his father began, "we had a helicopter hovering near here too, right over the house." Gary felt a prickle of unease. 2 helicopters, both hovering, both appearing at just the right moment to watch. A coincidence, perhaps, but it hung over their conversation like a shadow. He tried to push it from his mind, figuring a weekend reconnecting with old friends would take his mind off these strange coincidences. He picked up the phone and dialed his friend Mike, hoping to arrange a meetup. Mike answered with a hint of surprise in his voice.
"Hey, Gary, you sound better already."
Gary hesitated.
"Better? I didn't realize I was sick."
"What are you talking about? We just spoke 20 minutes ago. You told me you were in town."
A chill ran down Gary's spine.
"Mike, I didn't call you. I just got here."
But Mike insisted. He'd received a call from Gary or someone who sounded exactly like him, claiming he was in town and that he'd flown in through a different airport than the one Gary had actually used. Gary struggled to process it, a wave of unease seeping through him. He hadn't told anyone he was coming to New York. No one. And yet, someone who sounded like him, had called Mike just minutes before. The 2 friends sat in silence, each trying to grasp what this could mean. Gary scanned his memory, but nothing explained this strange encounter. Then suddenly a harsh beep interrupted his thoughts. It was the signal of another incoming call. He muttered a quick goodbye to Mike and switched over. But as soon as he answered, a peculiar, stilted voice filled the line. The voice was strangely mechanical, as if from a recording. Every instinct told him something was wrong. The unease deepened into fear. He reached for his answering machine to record, just in time.
Oh, I thought I was going to hear it. Well, that is extra creepy. Mm-hmm. And I thought of another thing it's overlapping with.
Yeah, what is that?
Another couple things, in fact. Like, these weird guys and these weird occurrences often happen with the black-eyed kids, but also, more specifically, the people who were monitoring the Polybius machines.
Yes.
Had a lot of this characteristic. So we hit 2 territories there. And then, of course, with the UFO, how many UFO episodes have we done? Quite a few.
A ton of them.
I mean, it's been a while since I've threatened any aliens, but I remember us doing that quite a bit before.
Oh, yeah. We've done a lot of UFO episodes. And, of course, this one, what makes this one so weird is you would think based on the story, or at least I would think based on the story, that Gary had to see the UFO. Yeah. Because he's the one where all the weird stuff is happening. But it wasn't Gary at all.
Right.
It was Gary's dad.
Actually, it's not even mostly Gary that's experiencing it. It's his brother. It's his father. Like, Gary's only experiencing like 1/3 of these things.
You would think that, but think.
Right.
Gary's hearing from his brother, hey, I saw a version of you, but it wasn't you.
Right.
Then he's got the helicopter instance. Then he's got the two guys at the airport. Now he's got to his dad's house. And now his friend's saying, dude, I just talked to you 20 minutes ago.
Right. That's true. But this is more affecting other people, in fact, really.
Inadvertently. I call that collateral damage.
Yeah, that could very well be. And I don't think it's related to, like, normally you'd hear these stories and someone would see the UFO first and then they'd start getting harassed. This is like pre-harassment almost or something.
Correct. It kind of feels that way. Because again, it's Gary's dad. He and Gary's dad and his dad's brother, his uncle, they're in West Virginia. We did the Mothman episode.
Yeah.
They see this.
There's another step on.
Could be, coincidentally a tie-in.
Yeah.
So they see this UFO, and as they're looking at this UFO, they make note of it. Now Gary's talking to his dad about, dude, it's just at, freaking the brother's wedding. He tells me all this crazy stuff. He goes, then I go home. I got this helicopter hovering, and his dad's like, wait. We had a helicopter hovering over us.
Yeah.
Which is very odd.
Yeah. Maybe they're just all messing with him. They got together. They got together at the wedding and they're like, let's really mess with Gary.
Wouldn't that be crazy?
Just kidding. That would be crazy. Unlikely, but that's an interesting idea.
It really is. When I was piecing this together, I'm like, how many episodes can I tie into this one episode? And like right now, we're already like 7 different episodes deep.
Yeah. You've only got 54 more to tie in.
We got a few.
Or something like that.
We got a few. I can tell you.
You're hitting the bases, though.
At least on episode, the first. So this is a 2-parter, like I said. The first parter, we're going to get at least 1 phone call in there.
Right. I thought I was getting it in that last segment.
Well, I had to cut it. I can't give you too much too quick, Nick.
That was a cliffhanger. This is just like TV all over again.
Yep, that's what I do, Nick.
This is just like waiting for Yellow Jacket season 3. Out
of curiosity, what do you think this all is now, Nick? You've got a lot of information. What do you think this could be?
It's difficult to decipher because, like I said before, I'm really used to big event like a UFO followed by all these other things. So now I'm wondering if there's something weird about Gary. Like, is he jumping through time? Is he some kind of experiment? There's got to be some tie-in with the UFO. There's got to be. So I'm thinking maybe he's like some kind of experiment and he's jumping through time or losing memories, because that happens a lot with UFOs. You lose your memory. He called this guy and forgot how it happened. Like that. I guess that's where I'm landing right at the moment. I really don't know. It's very mysterious.
I would say right now we are 12 minutes into 34 minutes of narration. So we're just under halfway, just barely under.
Yeah.
The next segment's going to take us over the halfway mark.
Right.
Now, strategically, the way that I decided to place this, because I figure this is probably going to be per episode, probably about an hour and 20 minutes each.
Okay, that's a good amount.
Yeah, each-ish. I hate when we do the 2 hour and then the 2 hour, like a 4 hour.
Yeah.
That's a lot. I don't.
Yeah, that's a little much.
That's a little much. I try to keep.
But we've been guilty of it repeatedly.
We've been known to go a couple hours into some stuff.
Dude, we used to go 2 hours, 24 minutes per episode on those 2-parters.
Yeah.
Like, I used to think, I said, man, this should almost be a 3-parter, really.
That's true. It did feel that way, yeah.
But you live, you learn, right?
Live and learn. What I found is I feel like our sweet spot's like an hour 20, hour 35.
Yeah. And you know what? I listen to a lot of podcasts in an hour 20. is almost generally what I'm looking at every time.
Yeah, that's kind of the magic number. It's about an hour 20. Because if you think about it, in the television world, that's really, when you take commercials out, that's really the equivalent of like an hour and a half. A little bit more than that, like an hour, 40 minutes.
Well, yeah, somewhere around there. And I mean, we got no commercials.
Correct.
We should make up fake commercials. That'd be funny.
We should do like fake commercials for things that we sell.
Yeah, exactly. We had those t-shirts one time that I thought were pretty sweet.
We need to.
I bet we could do even better on those now.
Oh, yeah. I feel like we need to come out with like an apparel line. And we got to do it before next year because we need to wear branded t-shirts when we go on that ghost hunt.
We can do that easy.
Yeah.
We can do that easy.
Well, what I'm thinking is, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 2 separate videos, one for Deceptive Reality and one for Retraced Echoes. So I'm going to wear a Deceptive Reality shirt for a while, and then I'm going to switch to Retraced Echoes.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna get you 2 shirts too, one Deceptive Reality and one Retraced Echoes, and then I'll cut that way.
Sweet.
You're not watching the same thing twice. You know, you see different things over here.
Special guest star.
Yeah, exactly. Nick's a guest star over in Retraced Echoes land. Yes.
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often.
Doesn't happen very often. There's been times where I'm like, I'd like to pull Nick into this because this would be interesting, but I'm like, Nick got a busy life. Okay. You don't got time for this.
Oh, I'd do that. Like I'd like special guests. I mean, being a co-host is one thing, but being a guest star
VIP
is extra special.
Yeah, VIP, Nick.
Like once in a while, you know. I'd dress up. I'll have a tuxedo and a little top hat.
That's fancy. That reminds me of that little frog. Man. Hello, my baby. Hello, my darling. Hello, my right girl.
You know who else has a little hat?
Who?
Art the Clown from Terrifier 3.
No clue who that is.
Do you know about this movie?
No.
It's like probably one of the highest grossing single horror movies of all time. It's the one that people are throwing up at in the theaters and all that kind of stuff.
I can tell you that Nick, for Halloween, you had dressed up as somebody. Who did you dress up as?
Well, it was just a random thing that I threw together, but the makeup was an homage to Art the Clown.
I was like, I feel like I've seen this person before.
I had a lot of fun passing out candy and stuff. Like I was the Halloween barker. I was like yelling, "Come one, come all to the haunted step. There's a little tiny Mike Myers here that you can get candy from." You know who that little tiny Mike Myers was? That was my friend Jen.
Oh man, Jen was passing out some
5 foot 5'4".
You better get this right, Nick.
So
she's gonna be mad.
Short, real short. She's little.
Don't listen to him,
It
Jen.
don't matter.
You're big in your own right.
She was having a good old time just staring at people with that Michael Myers mask. People were scared.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I saw that, Nick, and then I showed Jess. I'm like, look at Nick, man, he looks scary.
That's what I go for. That's the inner me.
Hey, listen.
That's the inner me, man.
That's what I'm telling you. You got a history in horror, Nick. I feel like that could be big for you.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you, by next Halloween, I'm hoping to have started filming a horror movie. So we'll see.
Don't worry, folks. He's still going to do the podcast.
The horror movie promotes the podcast. Like, it's going to be in the credits, man.
Bam. That's what I'm talking about. Well, speaking of horror movies, Nick, are you ready to start the horror? That didn't sound right.
I am ready for the horror of the next segment.
Well, just for the record, the rest of these segments, except for the last one, is going to go because it cut off right as he was hitting the answering machine button.
I know. Is this a real call we're going to hear?
This is the live real call from the from the tape. So back in the old days, for those of you that don't know, You had your landline. That was a line that was attached to your house, kids.
I know. I barely remember it.
Now, you had an answering machine that went between the house and the phone. And what happened is, after 4 rings, if someone didn't pick up the phone, the answering machine would pick up and you could leave a message like voicemail, but it would record on these little tapes. For those of you that don't know what a tape is. I do remember those. There were magnetic strips that's on a spool, and it would record the information electronically. So.
And sometimes it would eat it.
Sometimes it would eat it. And that was the absolute worst. If you had one of your favorite tapes and it ate it, that's death.
Yeah. Yeah. Then you got to get a little pencil out and stick it in the spokes and turn it and turn it and turn it.
Kids have it so easy.
I remember this. But, I know. I wouldn't go back in time for anything.
Oh, I would. I love that era. I used to make my own, back in the day, my own DJ tapes.
Mixtapes. You were making mixtapes.
I was making mixtapes. But I used to act like the DJ. I'd be like, coming up next, we have the Beach Boys singing blah, blah, blah. And then I go, boop.
Yeah. Well, actually, what people probably heard then was click, click.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you used to have to press record and play at the same time on these things.
Kids have
isn't that wild?
Kids have no clue.
No clue.
But the answer machine back in the day, you could press a record button. It would record the conversation. So we ended the last segment as he hit the record button on the answer machine. In the next segment, we're going right into the phone call with the answer machine.
Yeah, I can't wait because I did not appreciate that cliffhanger.
I'm sorry, Nick. Listen, I gotta keep this.
It's okay. Everything else is cool, but that was a big mean thing.
Well, here we go. Let's make Nick feel a little bit happier.
Yes. I'll tell you who it is. Yeah. Do you want to speak to him?
Scary's Sudbrink there.
Yeah, who's this? Steven? Are you playing games with me or what? Huh? Steven, if you're playing games, I'm going to kick your ass.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
Huh?
You're being impersonated by the other voice.
Yeah, this is you, Steven, you idiot. You're pissing me off. You jerk. I'm going to get you on... Let's see what it says. Review. 1 new call out of area. Is Steven out of the area?
How long are you going to be back from Texas?
Wait, say that again?
You're being impersonated by the other voice.
Wait, hold on. Is Steven out of the calling area or what?
What do I know?
What do you mean you don't know? He's in Queens. Well, who are you talking? I don't know who the
Hello?
Hello?
Here's Gary's Sudbrink there.
Who is this? Sounds like a freaking robot.
So hello? How long are you going to be back from Texas?
What was that again, sir?
You're being impersonated by the other voice.
Oh, be quiet, Alpha. Sorry, would you see that again? Hello? Being impersonated by what voice?
Hello?
Yeah. Hello?
Here's Gary's Sudbrink there.
Yeah, hold on a second. Yeah, what is your question? I'll answer it.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
How long?
You're being impersonated by the other voice.
Right. When am I coming back? Is that your question? Okay, there was a break. Hold on. You want to know when I'm coming back to Texas? Oh, is that your question?
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
How long am I going to be back from Texas? That question doesn't make any sense.
By the other voice.
Okay. I'll be coming back eventually. I can't tell you when. You should know that answer to the questions because you seem to know more about me than I do. You know what I'm saying?
Are you an intergalactic person?
Are you a space alien?
Sounds like he hung up.
I can't believe this.
He hung up, Gary.
See if he comes back.
All right, I'll hang up.
Gary's hands were trembling as he dialed Mike's number. He had to share what he'd heard, to make sense of it, to reassure himself that the call had really happened. But Mike could barely keep up as Gary spilled out his story. The voice on the other line, the strange, echoing phrases. It made no sense. Why would someone go to such lengths to unsettle him? And then, just 40 minutes later, the phone rang again.
That was one of the scariest things I've heard on this podcast since we've started.
Pretty spooky. Have you heard of this before, Nick?
I have not. Do you remember how freaked out I was by that thing in the well from that episode?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is probably on par with that. Like that sounded like he was playing the same thing over and over again. The tone never changed. The
way he screwed up his name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's weird, man. And I love the typical, like, this guy's got to be pure New Yorkers because he's like, who the frick? I'm going to kick your friggin'.
Exactly. They call this mystery, Nick. They call it the Sudbrink phone calls. And the reason for that is
Sudbrink phone calls.
There's 4 separate phone calls that occur in a very short time frame.
Damn, man, that was scary. When you first heard that, did that not freak you out?
I did. Now, I heard these phone calls, goodness, a few years back. And I'm like, this was such a fascinating story to me. But I only heard the phone calls, and that's what they surrounded the entire story around. They didn't talk about any of the stuff we covered in the beginning.
Man, this wouldn't be as good without all this in it.
No, because
that was the same. Like, that was the same thing the guy was asking him, like, at the airport and on the plane, like, how long are you going to be away?
Right.
From Texas.
But
and it was weird that he was saying it weird on the phone, too.
Right. See, that's the thing. Every time, and probably even today, when I first heard the story, I heard just the tapes. This guy hears this crazy voice on the other side of these tapes. And I listened to it. I'm like, oh, that's creepy. That's just straight creepy. Yeah. It reminds me of those lost footage videos. You know what I'm saying? Like they find a random camcorder out in the woods and they watch it and this is what happens, you know?
Oh, yeah. You know what? The voice initially, like, if you only heard it once, you'd be like, well, this kind of sounds like someone who's half asleep and drunk or whatever. Yes. But as you keep listening, you realize it's not that at all.
Right.
Because the tone's always the same. The wording's always the same. It's almost like someone had recorded 3 phrases and they could only communicate with those 3 phrases.
Now, the interesting thing about that is I have, when I first heard them, especially the first phone call, when I first heard the first phone call, the first thought I had 3 different thoughts go through my mind.
Right.
The first one is, have you ever watched Men in Black, the movie with Will Smith? Yeah.
Yep.
Remember when the guy gets taken over and they're walking down the street and what is it? He's like, I want peanuts, you know?
Yeah. Like he was like almost like gurgling, talking kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I kind of had that thought too.
That's where my mind went to first.
Yeah.
But the second thought that I had of the 3 was, remember in Home Alone, the talk boy.
Yeah.
And he would record his voice and then he slows it down with the tape recorder.
Yeah.
And that's how he would fool everyone.
I could see you thinking that, but I don't feel like that's what was going on there.
Well, he gets mad when people talk and say it's got to be a talk boy. He gets ticked, apparently.
Right.
He does not like he doesn't like that theory at all.
Oh, okay. I'm not one for that either.
But that was the second thought I had because, you think of like he's recording his whatever it was, uncle in the shower or whatever. You better get out here, you little pervert. Mm. And then later they come in and they're trying to catch Kevin and he plays it back. And then there's the thing where he's, what was he trying to do? He's trying to buy something on the phone or something and he records it and he goes, I'll be right here. But it's his voice is just slowed down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the talk boy was the second thing I thought. And then the third thing I thought is it has to be some type of a tape recorder, but there's points in that audio. If you go back and listen to it again, there's points in that audio where he asks a question and instantaneously it answers it. Now, either he has it keyed up right to the right spot.
Yeah.
Because you have to remember, this is 1992. There's no soundboards.
Right. You had to rewind and fast forward and stuff like that. Yeah. Also, when they switched who was talking to the person on the phone, it immediately knew who it was talking to when it got back to him.
Correct.
So, yeah. Also, rewinding, you could hear that.
Yes.
When you used to do that.
Correct.
Like,
so none of this makes any kind of sense at all.
No. Man, that's a rough one. Because it sure does sound like it's the same tone every time.
Yes.
But I bet if you lined them up, it's probably not exact. But I think however it was being spoken was done the same way each time.
I don't know that they could do that with his name every single time. Because he kept saying...
Yeah, I don't know.
Because think about he was screwing up the last name. Is Gary Sudbrick there? Sudrick there?
Yeah, I thought he was asking for his son at some points there. Yeah. It was like kind of messed up. But it definitely had... And I think the people in the original copy must have heard it better because they were saying, it sounds robotic. It sounds robotic.
I cleaned up that audio. It sounded way worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
But on the
you
phone,
might have cleaned it up in such a way.
Yeah. On the phone, you got to figure they would have heard it clean. But from the answer machine tapes, that audio was a disaster. And I cleaned up and brought you'll hear when I start bringing up the audio on his side, the second call is even harder. Right. It's even harder to understand.
Yeah. They were clearly thinking, no, this is a robot or this is a space alien.
Right.
Or something like that. So they definitely heard something in the voice that.
Well, you heard his dad say it too.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
because his dad was like, "Are you an intergalactic being?" I was like, "What?"
Yeah, that was a real weird way of him putting that. By the way,
yeah, they said that his dad, and his uncle was basically the equivalent of a UFO nerd.
Ah, okay, that's why.
Yeah,
but they had seen one recently, and now they're getting calls like this.
Right. So that's the first thing.
And this wasn't coming into a cell phone.
No, not at all.
So how'd they even know he was there?
That's what doesn't make sense.
And how'd they even know to ask him? They were asking him the same question at the airport and stuff. It's wild, man.
Correct.
That was very unnerving.
It's very unnerving. And that's the thing. When you listen to it and then you stop and you think, how do they know all this stuff? So it's like the Watchers or the Circleville letters. They clearly know. Whoever this is, they clearly know.
Yeah.
You got the weird guys in the airport. They clearly had an agenda. It's not like they didn't have an agenda. They clearly had an agenda.
Yeah. And you can't just walk on a plane. Like for a joke, you can't just walk onto a plane.
Correct.
Like that's wild.
It makes no sense.
Man, that's really weird. But the phone call really did it. But in conjunction with this other stuff, because you said the other times you heard it, it was the phone calls without all this other stuff.
Yes.
This needs those other stories to support it.
Correct. And that's the crazy part. People think that just the phone calls are crazy. I'm like, there's an entire beginning. Because when I started doing I had heard another. Here's what's funny. I heard the segment about the wedding, and I didn't know it was the same story.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it wasn't until I'm like, what's this story about the wedding? And then I looked it up. I'm like, oh, this is the freaking phone call story too. I'm like, why does no one ever tell the two combined?
So, yeah, exactly. Like that seems really important, especially since the voice on this phone call says something you're being impersonated by the other voice.
Yeah. How creepy is that?
Right. Yeah, especially where other people are seeing someone who looks like him, but clearly is not him.
Right, because his face is all screwed up.
Right.
Like they said, his mouth was twisted and
that's just like Men in Black 2, where that guy was learning to use that body.
Yes, that's exactly where my mind went in the very beginning.
Oh, man. I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
I thought he was just making weird faces, but it was someone getting used to that body.
But what's weird is they was using his car.
Right. Well, if they've researched him, they must be like, well, this is the car that people would expect to see him in, so this is our best chance of not getting caught.
But think about it. It's 1992.
Like that.
He had a jacked up bumper.
Right. Yeah.
They had to replicate that car perfectly.
I think if this was like alien related, they could totally do that. Mm-hmm. But another thing too is I'm not sure distance would mean much to them, so they wouldn't think it's out of the ordinary that maybe this car is seen 3,000 miles from where it should be. That might be no distance to them whatsoever.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Correct.
Man. I don't know how far in the deep end we're getting with theories, but this is all making sense to me. that this is what kind of is happening. Like they're impersonating him, and they're not doing a great job of it. But then why are they telling him about it?
The crazy part is I've heard people tell this story, and they never play the tapes.
Yeah, man, that's crazy.
And I'm like, without
it
the
makes
tapes,
me wonder what's going on in Texas.
I know Texas got some crazy stuff, man.
Like, is his doppelganger in Texas doing crazy stuff in his place?
Who knows? That's what I'm saying. There's so many different paranormal things. Like a lot of times we can tie other cases together. This one has them right there. They're like, you don't have to go search and listen. We're just going to give them to you.
Yeah, this is wild. Whenever you are able to throw actual recordings into these, that brings it to a whole other level. Because I've really got chills because that was terrifying to me.
Yes. And think about it. Back then, he looks at the phone. We didn't even talk about this. It says out of area.
Yeah. And he's like, is this guy out of area? And the mom's like, how would I know? I thought that really added to the realism.
The background of the parents are hilarious because they're confused. They're like, what is going on? Because they're calling the parents' house.
Yeah.
Because Gary's just visiting.
Yeah. And he was sure it was Steven at first.
And that's the other thing. I don't know if you've connected this in the last segment before this one. Gary was talking to his friend, and his friend said, you're sounding better already.
Yeah, I know.
Which means that he thought Gary was Gary, but he was just sick. His voice was a little off.
Right.
But he knew everything like Gary did. But he gave a different airport than the one Gary was in and a different time that he arrived.
And that's weird.
So the weird thing is, why are they connecting with all these other people to try to figure out information?
Yeah, it's almost like along our original lines of thinking that they're trying to get better at being Gary.
Right. Exactly.
And it sounds like they are.
Correct.
They are getting better.
Correct.
That's spooky.
Creepy freaking story.
This is spooky dookie. I'll tell you right now.
Yeah. I thought you'd like this. If you hadn't heard the story.
You know what? Don't worry about it. This is like now my favorite episode so far.
Yeah.
Unless something goes drastically another way, this is my favorite so far.
This is the most normal we're at right now.
Oh boy, I like to hear that.
That's the most normal by far, Nick.
Yeah, we're heading in a good direction then.
Exactly.
That's what I like to hear.
Exactly. So right now, you gotta think.
Mm-hmm.
Everything started out with the wedding. We started out with Steven's
Right.
brother, who's looking at Gary. He thinks it's Gary. Gary does the weird thing.
Right.
Then Gary, let's skip the entire airport. Gary's at his parents' house. He's talking to his buddy. Now he's talking to someone that said he was Gary. He initiated the phone call. So there's someone clearly impersonating. But what's weird is the thing that was impersonating Gary on the road, he was heading towards the wedding.
Yeah, that's really weird, huh?
It's very weird. Why would he do that? That doesn't make any sense.
Another thing, too, is if they're watching Gary so closely, they knew he was talking with his friend.
Right.
And they purposely chose to interrupt that call. What was he getting close to that they didn't want him to get close to?
That's a great question.
They didn't want him to get close to the other guy telling him more information about what he supposedly said, probably.
That'd be my guess.
Yeah, because they know too much for that to be a coincidence.
Right.
That happened for a reason.
I mean, he's talking to his buddy and they call him right in the middle of it. I mean,
yeah, they knew that.
Yeah. So maybe the phones are tapped somehow?
Yeah. Well, I say that's with all the other stuff they're doing, that's like child's play for them.
That's child's play, right. But
yeah,
then
like that's easy stuff.
You have the entire helicopters hovering above not only his house, but his parents' house. Like, what's that all about?
Yeah, that's extra weird too, because like those helicopters are clearly driven by regular people.
Right.
So why can't the regular people teach them how to be more human-like?
Right.
There's a lot of stuff that
there's a lot of stuff.
It's hard to decipher, man. It's difficult. But this would be, to me, this would be terrifying to have happen to you.
Oh yeah.
Because it's clearly someone who's trying to learn as much as they can about you.
Right.
And to do something as you.
It's kind of like, remember, I forget which podcast we was talking about it. I think it was released already. Where we talked about the people that would just call people and breathe in the phone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the Kukendall calls or whatever it was.
And those are just weird anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you sit there and you go, why are you, stop calling me weirdo. Little weird perv breathing in the phone. Like, what's your deal? You're an idiot, clearly.
Yeah.
And then you have those situations.
Well, this one here, like what would be sort of itching at the back of my mind is like, is this person going to replace me and dispose of me?
Well, he's given a warning though, Nick. You're being impersonated by the other voice.
Yeah. So is this someone on his side?
That's what doesn't make sense, because remember, this other voice was calling his buddy.
Right.
You're being impersonated by the other voice. But the person that called him in the middle of that phone call is the same one that was probably impersonating him to his friend.
Right. Yeah, the plan is very scattered, I would say, at best.
Right. And you got him thinking, at first he thinks it's just a practical joke. It's just his brother, Steven.
Yeah.
That's just trying to get one over on him.
Yeah. Steven, I'm going to kick your...
Right. I'm getting pissed off.
That'll be bleeped. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a few. The mom gets fired up here in a very short time frame. So
she's going to talk more on these other ones.
Oh, you're going to hear it in the background because everyone's confused because they're trying to figure out what's going on now. Especially now, you have to remember this next phone call that we're about to listen to.
Yeah,
it comes in. So, what's my time frame here? Hold on, let me go to the script. Because he gets that phone call as he's talking to his buddy. Spoke about 20 minutes ago. So that was that one. So he had that phone call we just listened to.
Right.
40 minutes later, phone call number 2 comes in. It's only been 40 minutes. 3 of these phone calls happen the same night.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So when a lot of people tell this story, it's just a one-night event then, basically.
they tell it. So basically it's 2 days is how they tell it. And then they kind of tell a little bit of the ending. The problem with this story is, and we're going to cover that in the end segment.
Yeah.
Is he never wrote a book. He only told his story at a few events. And he gave these tapes as well as his story to someone that we're going to cover in the last segment. That's how the story got out.
And it traveled. I guess.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Like, think about how many mysteries we look at. This is not a very common story. I think the bulk of people that watch this is not going to know this story.
Yeah, I've never caught a whiff of this, not from anything. And I mean, you'd think I would if I was looking into Men in Black and Black Eyed Kids. You would think that I would have heard of something.
Correct.
Yeah.
It all fits. That's what makes it so crazy.
So how did you come across this?
So here's the thing. I watched so many weird things that it just came up on my YouTube feed one day.
Oh, just random suggestion.
Yeah, just a random suggestion. This was probably like 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Okay.
But it was just the tapes. And then I Googled it and I kind of looked into it, trying to figure out, was there more to it that wasn't on the video? And, I don't even think that it had the phone calls. I think it was just the story.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I ended up watching something later that had the phone calls in it.
Yeah.
And then it was probably a couple years later, I heard the story about the wedding and I didn't even tie the two together. I'm like, well, that's a wild story. And I don't think that was a video. I want to say that was just something I read from a router.
Right.
And I ended up tying it all together. And when I did this research, I ran into the segment, a little bit of a segment that we're going to cover at the end. Because some stories do tie the airport together with the phone calls, but they don't tie in the wedding.
Right. Now, that seems crucial.
Yeah. Now, the weird thing is I've seen it tie. There's been like 2 or 3 channels that ties all 3 in.
Right.
But they're few and far in between.
Well, this is the source to hear it all.
Correct. We dove into
thorough.
the entire. We're a doggone professional podcast company. We need to get.
Heck yeah.
We need to get a T-shirt that says that we're a doggone professional podcast company.
Yeah, yeah. It's gotta say doggone.
That's right. Doggone's got to be in there.
That's right.
Well, are you ready to hear the next phone call, Nick?
I sure am. Ready and willing.
Let's go. Well, I told you it's going to be a 2-parter. Listen. You heard one of the calls. I gave you one. I gave you one for free. But the next 3, if you don't go back for the next 3, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah. Talk about Cliffhanger City.
Sorry, Nick. I'm sorry. Listen, hey, sometimes you gotta leave a little excitement in there, Nick.
Yeah, I'm going to give a little spoiler. There's going to be a lot of cliffhangers in the next episode, but they're worth being there for.
They are
That's
worth
important.
Being there. They are worth being there. The one thing that I really want you guys to think about when you go into part 2 is, what do you think it is right now? What do you think this entire story is about? Because I would question by the end of episode 2 if you would think it's the same thing.
Oh, they're definitely going to change their mind. They're not going to stick to that.
I don't think they will, because I don't think there's enough info. And all there is literally in part 2 is 3 more phone calls from whomever or whatever this is, and then a closing statement. There's just 4 audio segments.
Friggin' spooky, let me tell you.
Well, hopefully y'all enjoyed this. Please be sure to give us that thumbs up wherever you're listening or watching our podcast. Obviously, if you're watching us on YouTube, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and tell us in the comments down below, what do you think is on those tapes? What do you think they're saying? Because I don't know that everyone thinks the same thing on that either. So, but hopefully y'all enjoyed it. Until we see you in the next podcast. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Can you hear me? Are you there?
The wire hums, a voice in the static. through the dark, a connection erratic. I'm on the line, I'm in your ear. Closer now, do you feel the fear? Oh, the sound of silence breaking. Oh, a fragile thread we're making. Pick it up. In the shadows, drawing near. The message echoes, twisting the air. I'm always calling, but I'm never there. How long are you going to be back from Texas? You're being impersonated by the other voice. What? Who is this? Hello? Is Gary Sudbrink there? Oh, I know you hear me breathing. Oh, this line is never leaving. Pick it up. In the shadows, drawing near. The message echoes, twisting the air. I'm always calling, but I'm never there. Feel alone? Do you hear the tone? The line's not dead, it's under your bed.
You're being impersonated by the other voice. But right, when am I coming back? Is that your question?
So drink there. Alive. I'll call again when the clock hits 5.